Good day, everyone. This is your host, Elijah Bilel with the Side Hustler Society. And we're going to be talking about on the Side Hustler Society podcast. Ironically, we're talking about podcasting. Funny how that works, right? Seriously, though, the guest that I'm going to be speaking to today has pretty much a huge background when it comes to podcasting and how to make those podcasts successful. And truth be told, a lot of content creators, regardless if you're going to be into podcasting or not, there's a lot of good information that kind of runs parallel to what you'll be doing. So we have a lot of value that we'll be sharing in this show. His name is Nathan Gwilliam. He's a serial entrepreneur who has created and sold three digital ventures. His most recent exit was Adoption.com, which was the world's most visited adoption site. Since then, Nathan has begun building his fourth venture, PodUp, the ultimate podcasting platform with 50 plus tools for creating, growing, and monetizing a podcast venture, powered by AI. These tools are integrated, have one username and password, and are available for a small fraction of the price of licensing for all the technologies individually. In addition to this, Nathan has also consulted for numerous companies. For example, he's increased revenue by 5 million for a Facebook app in just 12 months. He's created a network of sites and social channels which has reached over 280 million monthly engagers. He's launched a YouTube channel in 4 different languages that receives 1.7 million video views in the first 2 months. And he has created a language learning platform that has reached close to a million fans. So, with that intro or bio being done, let's go ahead and play that intro and bring him on the show.
Welcome to the Side Hustlers Society podcast, the place where you can find out more about the hustles that are best for you. And of course, make more money in the process. Elijah has been in the gig economy and freelance space for over 8 years and has done over 4,000 deliveries on Uber Eats. Has several video editing clients, many properties on Airbnb, runs multiple YouTube channels, and is the author of the best-selling book, The Anatomy of Financial Success. It's his mission to empower people with the tools needed to be successful. Now, welcome your host, the king of the side hustles, Elijah Bilel.
All right, my fellow side hustlers, welcome to another episode of the Side Hustler Society podcast. I'm your host, Elijah. As y'all see, we actually have a guest today. Nathan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, Elijah.
Yeah, definitely. Especially for this theme for this season, we're going to be talking about essentially how to remove the word side from the word hustler and become a full-time hustler. So whatever someone is doing, how do you take that trade or skill and build a business around it and build it to the points where you don't really need the 9 to 5 should you desire. If you choose to stay with the 9 to 5, that's fine, but at least you have a choice. You don't feel like crowbarred into it.
Yeah, that sounds like a really important mission that you're on to help people with.
Yeah, definitely. In fact, I know it's behind the scenes, but that restaurant you told me about before we got started, I am going to take a look at that because the way you were describing it, I'm not hungry, but you might have started it a little. Now it's starting to come on, but I'll be able to muscle through the show though.
Well, I love that you're vegan and that restaurant. So I was recommending a restaurant in Fort Worth called the Lucas, and they have, it's like a Brazilian style pizzeria, and they'll bring around like 20 different kind of pizzas for you, including dessert pizzas, savory, sweet, all different kinds. And just pick whichever slice you want and just keep eating and keep trying different things. It's a really fun place.
Yeah, you mentioned like sweet pizza. That's something that's kind of underrated. I think we, at least in America, we associate pizza with just like the saltiness or like we don't associate it with any kind the other senses like sweet and stuff or sour. So
that's right.
Yeah, places that offer like that kind of variety, I think they kind of stand out. And then they bring back the fundamentals of like what pizza is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be just crowbarred into like that one taste bud.
Yeah, that's right. They have lots of fun creations, lots of different flavors to try.
All right. I won't harp on it too hard because some people will be wondering, my audience knows about the veggie outers, even though it is like something like separate. They'll be kind of wondering, like, you turning this into a veggie outers podcast where y'all talk about food so much. we're not gonna do that. But so Nathan, your bio states like you're a serial entrepreneur, and that means that like several people, like you go and you've started multiple businesses throughout your whole career, right?
Yeah, I built and sold 3 already, and I'm working on number 4.
Wow. So when someone, let's say you meet someone new, and they ask you like, "Hey, so what is it that you do?" What do you tell them?
I say I'm a serial entrepreneur, and a phrase that I use to explain myself is I say I'm an incurable creator. I have to be creating something or I die. It's part of my soul.
Ooh, incurable creator. I like that.
Yeah, that describes me better than anything else I've ever thought of.
Hmm. Wow. So like the where someone would say like I'm a creative entrepreneur, you'll say something like that, and that's so eccentric but also so true. The person has to know more about you at that point. Like, well, hold, whoa, wait, what? Oh, there's got to be a story to that. Like, I'm just gonna shut up and listen, then you can go into your story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, some people go skiing for fun, which I love. Some people go, mountain biking for fun, which I love. But even more than that, I love creating things, right? I love creating a business or creating a garden, whatever it is that I create. Some people talk about creators, and you think about creator as someone that writes a blog post or creates a podcast, and which is true. But even more than that, a creator is someone that creates businesses. And I think your audience are creators, and if they create businesses and they create podcasts and blogs and content, then they're a double creator, right? They're leveraging their content creation to create their business.
Yeah. So it's kind of like one thing stacked on another. Roberto Blake, uh, very known like YouTube slash content creator guru, kind of has this saying. He says that YouTubers or content creators are accidental business owners.
If they do it right, right? There's a lot of people that create great content, but they don't market it well, so nobody knows about it, and then they don't monetize it well, so they don't make any money from it. And it's hard to become a business owner when you're missing those kind of pieces.
Oh yeah, and I think that's why it's so important. Like what you said, if what you're doing, if it's a hobby, okay, it gets. I would actually argue you should still monetize it because why not make money off your hobby? I mean, this is a side hustle society after all. But
Yeah.
technically, if it is a hobby, I kind of understand if you don't want to like put this monetization structure around it. But let's say if you have the intent to want to go full time, well, you need to know every single way to monetize your content, like ever. That's why it's so important.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to monetize your content. I've written an ebook and done a little mini video course on 24 different proven strategies for monetizing a podcast. And there's a lot more than that. Those are just the 24 that we chose to cover.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because a lot of people, when they do a podcast, they think that they're going to make money through ads, right? That's what comes to their mind is ads. And honestly, that's kind of suck. Ads are one of the worst ways to monetize a podcast. There's a lot better strategy. You should be your best advertiser. You should be your biggest advertiser. You should be selling your own products and services.
Well, we are definitely going to get into that later in the show. My audience is familiar with. I don't know what it's called, but I'll just explain the situation just so you'll know about it. But on YouTube, like I've been on YouTube for a long time now. I have 4 YouTube channels, and the biggest one, Financial Anatomy, that covers personal finance and apps that involve money. It was hit with something known as the invalid traffic glitch, and essentially that means that YouTube suspects bots are targeting your channel and watching the ads that are shown on your channel. And in the effort to stop it, your ad revenue, like it'll the status will change from like normal monetization to being having limited ads. And that means your ad revenue will be reduced by, it depends on the person, but for me, it was reduced by like 60 to 70%. And I know some people was reduced to like 10% of what it was. And I was just kind of thinking like, it was annoying for me, but I had other sources of making money outside of ads because I sell my own digital products. I had some sponsorships going on. I had other ways to make monetize my content. But if I didn't, oh, that would have been like a huge problem. Like,
Yeah.
if I was just completely relying on just the ad revenue.
That's right. So one of the best solutions to that is taking those ad spots and turning them into ads for your products and services. And I think you'd probably find that you can make more money selling your own products and services by a lot than instead of putting in ads for other people.
Right. And before we're gonna get heavy into that in a sec, but I do want to ask you this: as a serial entrepreneur, like and this may have changed throughout the years, but like, what does a typical day like look like for you from like start to finish?
You see my calendar here. So you can, I don't know if you can see it on there. Like every single minute scheduled from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. is usually, and tomorrow is the same way. So I have a lot of developers in India. I have a team in India. And so I usually block off from like 6 a.m. to like 11 a.m. or noon to work with my India team. I have copywriters and marketers, designers, developers, a lot of very, very talented team members in India. So I'll block off that early morning time to work with them. And then in the afternoon, I'm usually interviewing people for my show, for my shows. I do multiple shows. I usually am a guest on other shows. Today I'm on 4 different shows. I work on my emails. I develop my products. I'm to a spot where I don't have a lot of time to be the doer in my business anymore. And so I have really talented people, and I am helping facilitate them to be doers, where we can get a lot more done instead of me being the person that's doing. So almost every day is scheduled in meetings, either me being on shows or me interviewing people on my shows or me working with my team members to help them get things done.
That kind of reminds me of something that Damon John, like from Shark Tank, the founder of Fubu, said in his book. His book about grind, or rising to the grind. Essentially, how you nearly need to map out like every single minute of your day. Otherwise, things are going to slip through the cracks, and you're not going to get everything you want accomplished unless it's in that calendar. The calendar holds you accountable. I see you've really applied that. Would you say that plays a big role in your success?
It does, because I take my most important projects that need to get done, and I have my assistant put them in my calendar. I'll say, okay, I need to meet with this person. We need to work on this project. We'll bring in the right team members and get it scheduled and make sure it happens on the calendar. And then when that meeting's over, you schedule the follow-up. Let's say it takes the team a week to get their part of it done. You schedule the follow-up a week from then, and you make sure that your most important things are done. I learned that from Stephen Covey. If you've ever read the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about big rocks. And so the way he teaches this principle is he gives you a bunch of sand, and he gives you small rocks, and then he gives you big rocks, and he says, okay, go ahead and put this in the jar. And so everyone pours in the sand first, and then they pour in the small rocks, and then there's no room for the big rocks to fit in that jar. And then instead, what he has you do is he has you put in the big rocks first, which represent the most important priorities in your life, right? You got to put the big rocks in first, and then you put the little rocks in around it, and then you pour the sand, and everything fits. But if you try to put the sand and the little rocks in first, the little priorities, the busy work stuff first, there's never room for the big priorities. So make sure you get the big rocks, the big priorities, the most important things you got to get done on your calendar first. And that's your way to make sure that you're using your time to do the most important things. And then you fit the little tasks around it.
Wow. I like that metaphor. And I've heard of that book, but I haven't had a chance to pick it up. But you're giving me more reasons to go ahead and add it to the top of the list.
Yeah, it's a life changer. It's a game changer.
Yeah, there's a spot for it behind me. It's waiting. I think I'll go ahead and order it once we finish this podcast. But as a serial entrepreneur, I know a lot of people are wondering, and I'm even wondering, when was the last time you had a traditional job, or was there even a first time?
um, I mean, when I started working, my first job, I worked in a yogurt shop, and then I pushed shopping carts at Albertsons for a job. Remember one day I was pushing shopping carts. It was 122 degrees that day in Arizona.
Oh
Um,
gosh.
yeah, but you're right. Once you start creating your own businesses, it's kind of addictive, and you get to a spot where you become unemployable. I started my first real business when I was a junior in college. Started it in a computer lab. I won a business plan competition at my university and got started. And I ran my business for, I don't know, 15 years, where I was my own boss. So I really never worked for anybody in a real traditional business, until I got to a spot where I stepped away from my business for a bit. I hired someone to run one of my businesses that I was doing, and I stepped away. And I had dropped out of college after my junior year, and I decided I want to go back and finish my college degree, and I did that, and I got my MBA. And while I was doing that, I figured that I wanted to learn from people that were a lot smarter than me. So I actually went back and I made a list of some of the people that I respected most in business. And I actually went back and I worked for 4 of them. And I was not the CEO of those businesses. And I got to learn from some of the smartest business leaders that I knew. And I handpicked them, and I was blessed to be able to work for them and did projects for them and learned a ton from them. And then after I did that for a few years, I went back and ran my own businesses again. And I probably will never go work for anybody again. But yes, there was a time where I didn't want to be limited by what I knew. And I wanted to learn from people that had been a lot more successful than me. And I wanted to be able to accelerate my ability to grow businesses. So I did take jobs for other people for a while there, mostly or greatly because of the education that I wanted to get from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I forgot where I read it from, but the way you approach jobs was, is there a skill set I'm gonna learn from doing this that essentially will serve me and starting my own thing one day?
That's right. That's a great way to look at it. Your job should be your education. You shouldn't do a job just to make money. You need to pick a job that's going to help you get further down the path of what you want to be as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, actually, I'm remembering where I heard it from now. I know I'm like a walking dictionary today, but it wasn't in a book. Well, he may have put it in one of his books, but I didn't hear it. I didn't read it in the book. But Robert Greene, the author of the 48 Laws of Power, he was being interviewed by someone, and he basically said the same thing. In fact, he even described a situation where he actually, obviously before he became famous for writing this first book, he's taking on jobs, and he always took jobs based on the skill set that he would acquire from the job. And sometimes that meant taking a lower paying job.
Yep.
But clearly that paid off.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Take the job that's going to teach you what you need to know to be successful in your life.
Indeed. So since you're a serial entrepreneur, with your the previous business ventures you started, did you start them with the intent to eventually sell them, or did that thought kind of pop up maybe later in your head and then eventually you set it up to sell?
No, I've always had the intention to sell. I build and sell ventures. That's who I am. That's what I do.
Okay. So that means that there's certain things that in a business need to be set up. Really, it helps if it's from the very beginning, from a systems perspective, so that when you are ready to sell, it is something that is sellable. Do you want to elaborate more on what some of that stuff might be?
Yeah, you want to make sure you can always step away from your business. Every time I sell a business, nearly always, they want me to stay with it for a period of time. The last one that I sold to a business in Fort Worth, I stayed there for almost 3 years transitioning the business to them. helping them to continue to grow it. And you don't want to be in a spot that you have to stay there forever. You don't want to build it so that it's dependent upon you. So when you create a podcast, for example, I would want to call it the Nathan Gwilliam Show, right? Because then you always have to stay there, right? It's really hard to transition it to someone else. So instead, you create something focused on your brand. And one of my podcasts, for example, is the Podcasting Secrets Show. And so that's something, because it's built around the topic instead of built around me, that as I sold the business, I could transition that show to somebody else.
Right. And interesting enough, as a content creator, there's been kind of a boom of like faceless content. And before, I didn't really, well, I understand like if people don't want to get on camera for, privacy reasons or whatever. But since I was someone that was willing to get on camera, I always looked at that a certain way. But now I'm actually kind of reverse engineering it. Like, you know what? That actually is a smart play, because they can get attached to a voice, but a voice can change and people can accept that pretty easily. So like, depending on what your channel is covering, you could step away from that quote unquote business and either sell it or have someone else doing the voiceover and the editing and all that stuff. And I could actually see that being like very viable.
That's right. And the second part of what you were saying just there, you could step away from it and hand the whole show over to someone else, or you can step away from it greatly by outsourcing most of the work for that show, right? When you get to a spot that you can afford it, you can get someone to book your guests. You can get someone to, write your blog post and edit your video and do your marketing and develop your monetization and do your customer service, right? You can outsource 90% of the show. You can get to a spot that you could be running 5 shows at the same time and still have another business, because you've outsourced most of the work from the show.
Right. And since we are talking about shows and content creation, I suppose this would be a great time to kind of circle back to your current businesses like PodUp. What inspired you to start PodUp?
Yeah, so when I was selling my last business back in 2019, I had a mentor named Russell Brunson. I think Russell's the best digital marketer of our generation.
Expert Secrets.
Yeah, that's right. Traffic Secrets, Expert Secrets, .com Secrets. And Russell made me a promise. He said, if you publish every day for a year, you'll be financially free. And so I took him up on his promise, and I published every day for a year in audio, video, social, a show that covered lots of different types of content that we syndicated to lots of different channels. And I got about 3 months into that, and I realized that I needed more than 30 different technologies. And those technologies cost almost $2,000 a month. And those technologies didn't integrate hardly at all together. They were missing a whole bunch of the features that I needed. It was really frustrating. And one day in frustration, I was just sitting down with one of my coworkers, and I said, okay, somebody's got to create this all-in-one podcasting platform that brings all of the tools together into one platform. Kind of like what Shopify did for e-commerce, right? Where Shopify brought 100 different tools into one platform and allowed you to license them for one low fee. I guess you can't get all of Shopify stuff. A lot of them are add-ons, but they brought everything together, and they made it easy to create a venture around e-commerce. And I could just see that someone was going to do that for podcasting. And I realized, okay, well, if someone's going to, that was my aha moment. If someone's going to do that, might as well be me. And so 6 years ago, I hired a bunch of talented developers, and we started building this. We put almost $6 million into this so far. And we now have a platform called PodUp. That's PODUP. And you can go into PodUp, and you can have access to 60 different tools, one low monthly fee. They're all integrated together, tools that help you launch a podcast, produce a podcast, grow a podcast, monetize a podcast, make a venture around a podcast, all from one platform. So that's what we do. And once we started selling that, we've had a whole bunch of businesses that have come to us that have said, okay, we know we need a podcast, but we just don't have time to do it. Can we just record the episodes and you guys do everything else for us? And so we opened an office in Jaipur, India. We have about 40 amazing team members there. And we have people that'll book your guests, people that'll build your website, design all of your logos and all of your artwork, people that'll write your blog posts, people that do your QA testing, do your marketing, help you build out your monetization. There's a whole team that'll do it there for you for a fraction of what it would cost you to do it here in the US.
Wow. So it's the one-stop shop for all things podcasts?
Yeah, the software and the services. Book you on shows, help you build courses, help you build a membership site, like whatever you need to really turn that into a venture. We have a team that can help you do that with our software.
Wow. I like how you said, someone's going to do it, so it might as well be me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's when you have a good opportunity, where you can just see it's going to happen. And instead of waiting for someone else to do it, you might as well just jump in and do it.
Right. Especially after the pandemic. Not to say that podcasts weren't prevalent before then, but I do feel like how many podcasts just kind of like they're stuck at home anyway. They had the idea to start a podcast. So like, I'm stuck at home, can't go to work. Let me just give it a shot. And those people are still podcasting now, and they've entered the six figures.
Yeah, that's right. Podcasting exploded during the pandemic. Podcasting and building a business around a podcast is something that tends to explode when there's a bad economy. Side hustles like you talk about are things that explode during a bad economy, right? When people start losing their jobs, they start needing more money, they need to do something on the side. They're looking for new ways to make money, and podcasting is a great way to do that, right? Build your following, build your authority, build your credibility, and your reach, and then find ways to monetize that.
Well, this is kind of mirroring a conversation I had with Roberto Blake, because he is the one that convinced me into starting a podcast. And for a while, I actually kind of was anti-podcast. Not like I hated him or anything. I just didn't see the value as a content creator. I was thinking like, well, I'm already a YouTuber. I can just make like normal videos and like just I wasn't seeing the value of it. And I was actually thinking like you kind of were talking at the beginning, like, do I feel like monetizing another channel right now? Not really. And but when he kind of broke it down, like, well, I mean, the ad stuff that'll come eventually, but like there's so many ways you can make money with a podcast, and it lines up with your brand, whether it be affiliate. We'll get into this further, I'm sure, but like affiliate marketing or sponsorships, or obviously selling your own products or memberships. It's just like, okay, you got me. So I'm going to start it. And here we are.
Yeah. There's a lot of advantages in podcasting. Comparing podcasting to YouTube, I mean, having a YouTube channel is phenomenal. But one of the reasons podcasting is such an amazing opportunity is because of multitasking, right? When we all only have so many hours in the day, and those hours are probably all completely consumed already. And so to go watch more YouTube channels and more YouTube videos sometimes is really hard because there's just not more time to do it. There's probably lots of YouTube videos we'd love to go watch and YouTube channels we'd love to follow, but there's not time because you have to sit and physically watch it. You can't do anything else really while you're watching a YouTube video. But podcasting is different because you can multitask with a podcast. You could be running, exercising. You could be doing the dishes. You could be mowing the lawn, right? You could be, driving in the car, commuting to work. And while you're doing something that's already consuming your time, you can add podcasting into that time and get a second thing without it taking more time.
Hey, everyone that just heard that, if you are listening to this podcast while you're working out or doing the lawn or like, doing your hobbies, like, why don't you drop a comment if you're watching on YouTube or like wherever you are, if you can leave a comment, saying like, hey, you got me. I was working out. Hey, I was cleaning up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You can do. So YouTube has actually become the #1 channel for consuming podcasts, and people, they work out, but then they listen to that YouTube channel from their phone while they're working out. So yes, you can use YouTube to consume the podcast.
Well, I think YouTube even knows that themselves because sometime last year, they started categorizing like, well, for one thing, podcasts were already on YouTube, but they started saying like, hey, you can have a playlist, but like, do you want this to be a podcast? Like, here's an option to set it as a podcast, and we've made an algorithm for that specifically for podcasts, which will serve podcasts, people listening to podcasts. And then now it's to the point to where if you have a playlist, YouTube may automatically categorize it as a podcast automatically. And if you don't want it, you have to uncategorize it. So even they kind of know like this podcast thing, like that's the trend. So we need to make sure we can accommodate that as much as possible.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people, they might even open a video or a video podcast on YouTube, but then they drive in the car and they just listen to it, right? Mm-hmm. They're consuming it as if it was a podcast, even though it was created as a video.
Right. So with podcasts, with that being the case with podcasts, do you feel like podcasting is in any way overrated or underrated right now?
I think it's overrated with some people that think it's a get-rich-quick scheme. Like they expect that they're going to have a podcast and 3 months later, they're going to be making a ton of money from it. That's probably not going to happen. But what it is a long-term retirement strategy, right? If you get in and you put in the reps and you do a really good job and you do great content and you market it really well and you build out great monetization streams you own, and you have great quality and build great relationships with your audience, like you're probably going to build something that's going to make you more money than anything else you're going to do. But it's going to take you time, right? You're going to have to build your audience and build your following and put in your reps.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk about podcast formats. Since I'm gonna call you the podcast expert because clearly you are. So this format works for me, but I'm not saying everyone should universally adopt it. That's an approach from someone that they're looking to start a podcast, but they don't know anything. They're listening to this show. They know that some podcasts, even though it's a little less often nowadays, but they have a seasonal format where like season 1 has this theme, season 2, season 3, and the podcasts are going to break, then come back. Versus another format is essentially every single week or every single 2 weeks or some kind of frequency, a new podcast episode is going to come out, but it's not a seasonal format. It's just a reoccurring format. What are the pros and cons of each? Or are you a fan of one versus the other format you're not so much a fan of?
Yeah, I am a big fan of doing recurring things, right? I'm a big fan of recurring revenue. I'm a big fan of recurring marketing. I am not a fan of seasons. I think you should get in and be consistent, and people get to know you and like you and consume you on a regular basis, right? I have one of my shows is a faith-based show, and I'll have people that'll tell me like every Sunday morning they watch my show or listen to my show, and if you stop your show because you're seasonal, then people get out of the habit of consuming your content and they'll go find something else to consume instead. So I'm a big believer in doing things consistently. Now, the thing that's in favor of seasons is it's good for podcasters to have breaks, right? You can get burnt out if it's constantly consuming you. And so the way you solve that problem is you get 2 months ahead. I am a big believer in you're not trying to edit the day that you're publishing, right? You're trying to record 2 months in advance and you try to get it done way in advance of your show. And if you do that and you can be recording your episodes a couple months in advance and you could be done with your episodes at least a month in advance, it makes it really easy for you to go on vacation. It makes it easy for you to take a break. It makes it easy when you're sick that you're not stressing about trying to get an episode out. So I think you can still get the benefit as a podcaster of seasons if you just get ahead and discipline yourself to be ahead.
Interesting you say that because my listeners know I also have a real estate business. I'm going to be going to Austin, Texas next week for a real estate event, and there's also some things I want to take a look at for as far as the market down there. And I'm gonna be going on the day where normally the podcast is going to be airing, the Side Hustle Society. But here's the thing: everything has already been pre-recorded and everything, so it's not going to require me to necessarily be live. I'll be interacting with the chat, but it's just kind of implementing what you said because I couldn't imagine like we're recording the show. And what if it's coming out tomorrow and then I had to do the editing like right
Yeah.
after the show, and like that just sounds like
It's so stressful and it's just not fun. If you want to quit being a podcaster, do that. Like it will motivate you to quit and pod fade really fast.
pod fade. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's where you do like 8 episodes and then you quit. Like so many people do that. It's because they do it stupid ways, right? They do it at the last minute. They try to get 30 different pieces of technology that don't work together. They spend a ton of money. They don't make any money from it. They don't monetize it all. Like if you do it dumb, it's not gonna be fun and you're gonna quit.
What's up, y'all? Hopefully y'all enjoying the content that y'all are watching right now. That content being YouTube or content creator related. With that being the case, I would be remiss if I didn't share the following with you. Many people wonder exactly how was it that I was able to establish 4 different YouTube channels, 2 of those channels being in the YouTube Partner Program, and one of them being a podcast channel that has different ways of making money. Now, I was able to do this in a large part because I'm a part of Awesome Creator Academy. Awesome Creator Academy is an academy focused on creative entrepreneurs that's run and founded by Roberto Blake. Now, they're not a sponsor of this video, but I am an affiliate of theirs, and I've known Roberto Blake for a few years now. When I first joined his Awesome Creator Academy back in 2019, I only had one channel, and that channel was known as the App Lifestyle at the time. Since then, I've renamed that channel to the Side Hustler Society. I started another channel called Financial Anatomy that's much bigger than the Side Hustler Society. The Side Hustler Society now has its own podcast that's significantly expanded my network and brought y'all value. And it even helped me start a YouTube channel based around a local meetup group that I have called The Veggie Outers, where we go to vegan restaurants and review them on a scale of 1 to 10. Being a part of Awesome Creator Academy helped me launch all this, and it significantly boosted the money I was able to make, not just from YouTube, but just from online businesses in general. I then took that money and then branched off into real estate locally, which allowed me to start making money with Airbnb and through real estate. All that has its foundations in me being a content creator, and that was significantly expanded because I'm part of Awesome Creator Academy. If you're serious about being a content creator and you want to maximize the most amount of money you can make with this new business of yours, I highly recommend that you check out Awesome Creator Academy. The link is going to be in the description and also the pinned comment. In the Academy, there are hundreds of hours worth of training in regards to pretty much anything that you'll need to know when it comes to the creator economy. Roberto also hosts live office hours twice a week to answer any kind of questions that you may have. So if you're serious about taking your content creation career to the next level, sign up for Awesome Creator Academy today. Roberto's been generous enough to give my community a 15% discount on your first purchase. So take advantage of that and sign up for Awesome Creator Academy today. With that being said, let's get back to the video. Yeah, so let's actually go ahead and run with that. So you gave an example what not to do, but if someone is wanting to start a podcast or whatever it may be around, what advice would you give to them? Like this is someone that they don't know anything about the podcast world. Maybe they've listened to a few. Like I want to start a podcast. What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So the first advice I would give is I would say, who's your ideal customer, right? I would start with that. And then I would focus on how can I give the most value possible to that ideal customer and build my show around giving as much value as possible to that ideal customer. And then I would invite that ideal customer as the guest on my show. And I think especially early on, you're going to make more money from your guests than you are from your listeners. Like if you have a coaching practice or a consulting practice, right? Find the people that are most likely to buy that coaching or that consulting practice and invite them as guests on your show. And you're probably going to sell a whole bunch of those people to be clients. You're probably going to make a lot of your money from that. Okay. So then I would start off, before I even started the first episode, I'd figure out how am I going to make money? And I would build my show around the revenue from the beginning. And I don't consider saying, well, I'm going to sell ads as a good monetization strategy. That's a crappy monetization strategy. Like you can sell ads, fine. And that's part of it, but that's like icing on the cake. You need to be your best advertiser. And you need to build something that you can promote to that target audience, whether it be coaching, consulting services, whether it be a membership site, whether it be courses that you're going to sell, right? There's so many different ways you can monetize that audience. So start from day one. And I especially recommend that your core monetization is a recurring revenue stream, that it's not something you have to sell over and over and over and over again every single month. That gets old really fast, and it's hard to grow that. So find something like a membership site, or if you're a health company, maybe it's a supplement that people buy on a recurring basis, but find a recurring revenue stream. Maybe it's a coaching program where people pay you every month for your coaching, right? Find something that's recurring, build around that. Even if you don't launch that from day one, know what that's going to be. So you're building your show around that from the very beginning. And then you need to find the right technology. I'm biased because I own one of these platforms, but I recommend you find an all-in-one podcasting platform. If you have to go find 30 different technologies and try to cobble them together or duct tape them together, it gets so expensive and it takes so much more time. Download those big video files and then upload the big video files and try to send them back and forth. And it's unnecessarily difficult. I recommend you find one solution that has as many of the tools as possible in that solution from day one. And like PodUp, we just did a Black Friday deal for $150. You could get 60 different podcasting tools all in one platform. And that included 18 AI tools, that included 11 monetization tools. It just makes life so much easier, so much less expensive, takes so much less time. I bet my PodUp software, I bet it takes me 80% less time than what it used to when I used to use all the individual tools. And then you've got time left. You can invest that time in growing your podcast, going and being on other shows, going and building your monetization streams, build courses, build a membership site. Like, instead of spending your time in your podcast, you can spend time working on growing and monetizing your podcast. So that would be the most important advice I would give you.
Gotcha. Because you actually already answered this, so I was going to ask next, like, for people. I'm going to ask because people in the comments are going to be complaining about this. Like, there's always the freebies. Like, people just like, well, there's plenty of free stuff out there. Like, why can't I go get on Spotify and start my podcast on there? It's free. Or like, why can't I go to Simplecast, which it costs money on Simplecast, but technically it's less than yours. So like, they're gonna ask like, why should I sign up with yours? But you've already kind of mentioned all the stuff that your software actually gives, which saves you so much time, and it's just something that all these other platforms don't offer, because you had that one-stop shop mentality for podcasts when you started this, right?
Yeah, that's right. So if all you want to do is record and publish an episode, you can do it a lot cheaper than using PodUp. You can go pay $15 or $20 a month and get a good solution, right? And publish your podcast. But if you really want to build a venture around a podcast, if you want to grow it, if you want 20 times the traffic, right, then you need a solution that's actually going to help you grow it. There's great tools out there, great platforms out there, but they might have 3 or 4 of the podcast tools you need. And so if you go with that, you're going to need to sign up with 12 or 15 or more different platforms. And if you go with one of these all-in-one platforms like PodUp, you get things built into it, right? You get things built in that help you grow your podcast. You get tools built in that help you monetize. If you want to do a course, that platform's built in to it's built into the podcasting platform. If you want to do coaching, that's built in to the platform. If you want to do e-commerce, it's built into the platform. You don't have to go sign up for Shopify. It's already there, right? So you got to ask yourself, what do you want? Do you want to just record and publish, or do you want to turn it into a business, right? And if you want to turn it into a business, then don't use a platform that just helps you record and publish. You got to pick a platform that's got the growth and the monetization tools built into it.
Right. Yeah. So for people this is probably the biggest thing that makes people hesitant about starting a podcast, aside from what you mentioned, like the administrative stuff. They may not know how to get guests on their show. I'm not saying every single podcast necessarily has to have a guest.
No, that's a big concern. Lots of people have. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do they address that? What would you recommend people do for getting their first guest, or just putting together a system to get guests on their podcast on a regular?
So guest booking actually involves two different things. It involves booking guests on your show, and it involves booking you as a guest on other shows, which is one of the best ways to market your show. So if you're going to sign up with a guest booking service, make sure it does both of those things. So we have a methodology we use, and we have a service called PodAllies, PodAllies, that does 40 different services for you. We'll book you as a guest on shows. We'll edit your videos. We'll book you. We'll get guests on your shows. We'll book you on other shows. We'll write your blog posts. We'll do your marketing, right? All of those different things. Build your website. So if you need help, you can go to podallies.com. So the methodology that podallies.com uses, if you want to do this yourself to book guests, is when you're first starting off, a lot of people aren't going to want to be on your show because you don't have a lot of traffic and you're not going to give them a lot of benefit. So you probably want to start off with friends and family, people that know you and are going to be willing to be on your show to help you, and not be on your show because they're going to get something out of it. So that's your first group. And you want to try to find like 10 or so people that are in that group that you can get on. Then the second group of people that we recommend you go after are authors. Authors are awesome because many authors, they've written a book, they have something they want to sell, but they don't have a lot of reach and following. Some authors do, but a lot of authors do not have a ton of reach and following. So the second group you should go after, go to Amazon, find all of the authors in your niche and invite them on your show. That's a great second group. And you can get a lot of that audience when you're first starting out. The third group that I recommend you go after is the small influencers. So it's people that have new podcasts, people that have smaller Instagram following. You know, find people in the niche that are aspiring influencers, they're growing influencers, and go invite that group on your show. And then as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you can invite larger guests and larger influencers, people that have bigger audiences. At the beginning, you're going to have to, like, some people start their podcast and they only want really big influencers on the show. And then they get really frustrated. It just doesn't really work that way. They have a whole bunch of audience and they don't want to go be on a ton of small shows, right? But as you get bigger, you'll be able to get on a lot more of those bigger shows. And once you have enough episodes and you have enough audience, you can reach out and you can get on most people's podcasts, right? Within your niche.
Nice.
Did that answer your question?
Oh, it did. I could personally, everyone knows I'm an author. I've written a Amazon best-selling book, The Anatomy of Financial Success. And every author is willing to go on a podcast tour, or at least authors that know what they're doing. They're going to go on a podcast tour by default when their book comes out. But once they do that, they're always open to go on more podcasts because it's just more publicity for their book. And authors are, it's one thing.
They have knowledge, they have expertise, right? They're good guests on a show.
Yeah, and authors are part of the crowd that will be the most likely to share the show too, not just appear on it, but also share the show too, because having a list of shows that you've appeared on where you broke down your expertise and promoted your book, and it's like that's pretty appealing. Yeah. So
it helps build their credibility.
Yeah. So that's a great win-win scenario. Plus, I mean, this will tie into the next question, but if you're part of the Amazon affiliate program, and most books are on Amazon nowadays, so you have a link to their book in the description or in the pinned comment or etc. And they get the sales from their book, but you also get an affiliate commission off every sale in addition to everything else in the customer's Amazon cart.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, can I share one more secret about getting on shows?
By all means.
So every CEO out there, almost every single CEO out there wants to be on more shows, right? They want the credibility, they want the promotion. And so they go and reach out to a whole bunch of podcast hosts and they get rejected. It's crickets, right? Because we all get way too many people wanting to be on our shows. And if they're just a business person and they don't have a show, they're going to get rejected most of the time. Here's the secret. If that business goes and creates a podcast in their niche and they build good audience and they have good value, then they can go out to all of the influencers in their space. They invite those influencers on their show, and then they can trade. And if they do a good job, they can get on a lot of those other podcasts, right? So you become a peer if you have a podcast. You can get all of this free advertising on other shows if you have a podcast. Whereas if you're a business without a podcast, you're probably either going to get told no, or you're going to have to pay a bunch of money to go get on all those podcasts.
That's so underrated. I didn't realize this until maybe a few episodes in my podcast, but having a podcast is a very strong networking opportunity. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. And that actually, what I said applies, but if you have an in-person podcast, multiply what I just said times 3. But just think about it. Like, it takes some traction to get going, but you have an in-person podcast, and then your guest is usually getting flown in or they're flying in, and then you'll have an episode. It's like, all right, we had the episode. Well, what else is there to do? Y'all are probably hungry, so let's go get something to eat. And it's just a natural networking scenario.
Yeah, definitely. And if whatever niche you're in, right, you invite your ideal customers on there, and you network with people that could actually pay you. Or if you want to be on more podcasts, you invite the best influencers in the space on, and you get a free marketing and promotion from the show. So it helps you really open a lot of different kind of doors.
Yeah. So do you feel like the podcast market is actually oversaturated right now?
I don't think so. I think there's always room for someone that's going to get in and do a good job and pay the price. Too many people get in and they pod fade, right? They start it and then they stop it and they give up because they weren't consistent. They didn't grow it well. They didn't provide value. They didn't make money from it. I think if you get in and you do it right, there's plenty of room.
Right. That's actually a barrier that if you get through that barrier, a lot of things will start opening up. Like if you can just get through your first 20 episodes, you'll actually start finding. Let's say if you weren't even doing some of the stuff that you mentioned. When you ask people to be on your podcast, they're going to look at how many episodes you've done, because people are aware of the pod fade. It's like, oh, you might pod fade a few episodes later, and then I just wasted my time. I think I'm good. But you at least have 20 episodes under your belt. It's like, okay, I think you might just make the cut. All right, let's go ahead and do it.
There's a lot of really big guests that'll say, I'll go on any podcast that has over 100 episodes. Like that's their mantra, because they know if you've made it to 100 episodes, you've got some following, you figured out what you're doing, and you probably have some staying power there. So things change as you continue to pay the price, put in the reps.
Right. Yeah. So I will say in a minute, we're going to start winding down the podcast. But I always ask my guests if they have a question that they want to hit me with. So Nathan, do you have a question you want to ask me?
What is your best podcast growth and monetization strategy?
Oh, that's kind of hard to answer. Probably, yeah. I would say, I don't want to say Linktree because I don't use a Linktree. I have my I developed a web page on my website, but I have it so that like there's nothing else to click on in that web page. But it really just has everywhere the podcast is, because not everyone is going to listen on YouTube, even though in a perfect world they would, because that's more money. But yeah, it has the podcast linked on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, like wherever a person would listen to a podcast, and it's on all those platforms. It has all those links, so it takes you there, and then you can subscribe or watch the podcast on whatever preferred platform that you want to do it on. But it all starts with clicking that link, and that link is pretty much everywhere in my social media. So on Instagram, on YouTube, all that stuff. And because there are people, believe it or not, they're just not a fan of YouTube. In fact, you want to talk about ads. Some people, if your podcast isn't in another place, they may not even check it out because, like, I don't want to deal with the ads. So they won't watch it on YouTube, but they'll pull it up on, well, I can't say Spotify because Spotify has ads now too. They'll pull it up on another platform and just watch it that way. Or listen to it that way, rather.
Yep. Yeah, I don't love consuming ads. I agree with you. You gotta be your own best advertiser. Because honestly, For example, one of my businesses was adoption.com, and we helped people adopt. And so if we created content that where we were selling something that actually helped people adopt, even though it was an ad, they looked at it as content, right? If you as a host create content that's actually an ad that's selling something, that's giving value, but it's selling something, and you're the one doing it and they trust you, many of your people aren't even going to look at it as an ad, right? Because it's helping them achieve what it is they're wanting to achieve.
Indeed. Yeah, that's true. So speaking of, as we're winding down, where can people get more of you, or where can people sign up for a PodUp or Pod Allies if they want to, take advantage of your software and just kind of start off on the right foot instead of looking into all this other stuff? They can just sign up with you and see what you have to offer.
Yeah, so you can go to podup.com, that's PODUP.com, and you can get a free 30-day trial of PodUp. With that free trial, you can get a free podcast monetization guide where we go through and teach you 24 different ways to monetize your podcast. You can also get a podcast growth guide where we teach you 30 different ways to grow your podcast. And there's video, there's ebook. So go check out podup.com, get a free trial, and get that growth and monetization podcasting education. And then if they're interested in having someone help them do it, if they say, I need a podcast, but I don't have time, then they can go to podallies.com. That's PODALLIES.com. And they can schedule a free podcast strategy call. And that call's with me. They can go set it up. Even if they never sign up with us, I will meet with them. I'll help them figure out their podcast growth and monetization strategy. And we will deliver to them a written podcast growth and monetization strategy.
Awesome. We'll be sure to leave links to both of those in the description and also the pinned comment. I did think of one more question I have for you, Nathan. Obviously, people want to start making money from their podcasts as soon as possible. And you gave a recommendation on what that should be. It should probably be some kind of reoccurring revenue. But I actually asked ChatGPT this, and I was real interested to see what it was going to say. And the question was, is it better for a podcast to have pre-recorded commercials that they put in certain slots in their podcast versus just saying, promoting whatever they want to promote in a more organic way as the show goes on, through the halfway point, etc.? Which one of those do you feel is better for someone when they're starting out?
Yeah. So 96% of people don't trust ads. Only 1% of millennials say that a compelling ad would make them trust a business more, right? 77% of people say that they don't trust almost anything that a business says about themselves. So the concept of ads is very flawed right now. And if you just have a business that records an ad and gives the ad to you, it's probably not going to be incredibly effective. Okay. What is a lot more effective is a host-read ad. Okay, where you, as the trusted host, are talking about a product that you've actually used, or you're talking about a product that you've developed. They're going to trust you a lot more than that ad. So I strongly recommend host-read ads or becoming your biggest advertiser. I was a guest on the Glenn Beck show a while back. He's one of the biggest radio personalities in America. And that's what he did. He makes a fortune off of his ads, but he'll go use the product himself, and then he will recommend it to people on his show as something that he used that worked for him. And he'll only pick the products that he likes. And it's only him in his voice talking about the product. It's not the advertiser. It's not him running an ad where an advertiser is talking about their own product. So it's just a much more effective way to do it.
Okay. Do you feel that same way about this scenario? And I'll use myself as an example. I could talk about my book, The Anatomy of Financial Success, and I could do a quick ad read real quick where I talk about there's 6 financial personalities and how if you want to know which financial approaches work best for you, you got to find out which one of the 6 you are. You can go to thesodehustlesociety.com and get my book, The Anatomy of Financial Success today. Or I could record a commercial of me basically saying the same thing, but it is more of a interrupting of that show. But Does that make sense? Like it's the commercials for you and your services versus just reading it organically on the show. Would you say the same thing applies in that situation? Because these are ads for you, for in your services, not someone else's.
Yeah. So it is better. It's much better for you to run an ad where you're talking about your services. That is much better. But let me give you an even better example. Let's take it to the next level.
Okay.
So I have a friend that he has a company that sells speakers in motorcycle helmets. Okay. And so he sells motorcycle helmets with speakers in it. So let's say he did an ad that said, okay, here's my helmets and I'm using my helmet and this is why I love my helmet. And he ran ads with himself in his ads. Or let's say that he went and found these like professional or semi-professional motorcycle riders that are doing all these super cool tricks, wearing his helmets and telling people why they need to buy his helmet. Which one do you think is going to drive more sales?
This is where I can. Oh, go ahead.
I'll give you the answer. The client is going to be far more credible than him, right? So with your book, if you could get real people, like get me to go in and say, hey, I'm a CEO of a business, and this is how we applied Elijah's book concepts. This is the concept that really mattered to us. We applied it and we tripled our revenue by implementing this principle. Like, which one is more credible? You saying your book is cool or me saying your book is cool?
Obviously you.
Yeah. So I strongly recommend you go get testimonials from your clients in video format and run those as ads. You do it yourself and then you do it with your clients saying it and see which one works best. And I think you'll probably find that your clients talking about it is going to get you a lot better result than you talking about it.
I see. This is brilliant because part of the process of making a product or a good service, you're eventually going to get some testimonials. So once you get those, like probably on the sales page or whatever, just the extra step of asking like, hey, would you feel comfortable doing like a quick video testimonial? It doesn't have to be that long, like 30 seconds, a minute, etc.
Yeah.
And, enough people say yes, and then boom, you can make an ad out of it.
That's right. A great way to do that is with a podcast, right? So you find the people that have bought your book, you invite them as guests on your show, and you ask them to talk about your book and what they learned and how they applied it and how it helped their business. And then you turn that into a testimonial ad.
I don't think I have anything else to say. You said it.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. Yeah. That's actually a good ending point. But Nathan, we appreciate you coming on the Side Hustle Society podcast, dropping a lot of good game about just everything podcast, whether it's making money with a podcast, starting a podcast, maintaining a podcast, getting guests on a podcast. This is the ultimate podcast episode. I will stop saying podcast because I know people are annoyed of hearing the word. So, but we appreciate you coming on. I want to say for everyone that's watching on YouTube, if you can give us a thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm, greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new. And if you could drop a review for us on the platforms that you can review, that's greatly appreciated. So we're going to go ahead and wind down this episode, but make sure that y'all get out there, be safe, be profitable, and make that money. But we'll catch y'all in the next episode.
This episode may be over, but your hustling journey has just started. Visit thesidehustlersociety.com to access all links and resources mentioned in the show that will help you on your hustler's journey.